Hi everyone. Today I would like to focus on variables, which are the key components of any program. If you understand what a variable is, what it does, you are in a good spot. Let's get to it. I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. Go to Edit, Open Folder. I'm going to create a folder called Variables. Well, first I'm going to create the folder. Variables. Select that folder. Before I proceed, I think it's good that the font will be increased, especially for those with smaller resolutions. So how you increase the size of the interface? You do Control plus to make it bigger, or zoom in, or Control minus to zoom out. So we're going to zoom in once, and if you get confused, you don't know where you were, you can always go to View, Appearance, and reset your zoom level. Okay, let's go to Terminal, New Terminal, .NET, New Console. We have a program here. Let's add debugging. I'm going to remove the console write line hello world. So in a nutshell, a variable is like a bucket. It's a bucket that has a name, which is called identifier, and it can be empty or can contain some information of a specific type. For example, I want to create a variable of type integer called number. All right. So variable of type integer called number. What does this mean? That this specific bucket, when you look at it, its name is number. You say come number, like to a dog, the bucket will come. It reacts to the name number. What is in that bucket? Integers. So let's look at the naming components of a variable first. Number, it's called an identifier and identifies the variable, the bucket. When a variable is declared inside a function, like within those curly brackets, and above is the name of the function, the method, in that event, you start the name of a variable with a lowercase. If you have some complex name, you can use what we call a Camel Case. For example, string, it's a variable type used for text. First name. So that's an example of a Camel Case. So you always capitalize the second and on and subsequent word of your variable name. You can also do this, right? First lowercase name, right? but when you look at it, it's sort of hard to see, especially if it's longer. So it's easier to spot when you do it this way, right? And then always put a semicolon at the end. Another thing that to keep in mind, so let's say let's do another int number, right? So it complains about it, right? It has like a squiggly line that is reddish. Local variable function name number is already defined in this scope. So it's basically telling you that within this block, there is already a variable called number. So when you go like this, here number, come here boy, like you're speaking to a dog, right? Since there's two of them, they get confused. They don't know which one should come, right? So that's ambiguity. In computer programs, you cannot have ambiguity because the machine gets confused. So that's why numbers, name of variables have to be unique. So I can do int number 2, right? Another thing about numbers, the name of variables, is that they should mean something. Like I can store a name, first name, right? I can just call it A, right? String variable named A, right? So let's say this variable comes up later in your program, you're looking at it, and what is this, right? You want this to represent the last name, but you called it A. Nothing wrong with that, right? But if you try to read your program later on, or someone else reads your program, they're going to get confused because this name doesn't really tell me anything about what that variable does. What does it contain? I know it's a string, but what? So it's good to use actual meaningful name. So that is a Camel case. The first name, let's say last name of a person, right? So you see that's Camel case. There's also something called Pascal case. When a variable is defined outside a class, outside the function, inside a class, it's called a property, right? So if I go here and I go like this, string, I say first name, get set, is that okay? No. Outside the function, part of a class, we use Pascal case, where we capitalize every word. They have first name, right? The get and the set, just for information, allows you to put a value inside a variable and retrieve it. If you go the other way, it will not complain. But, you know, it's still, you try to follow some coding standards that are out there. Another thing to know about variables, so let's say I want to do, instead of int number 2, I want to say int 2 number, right? It doesn't like it. So although it's alphanumeric, the first character has to be alpha. Another thing about numbers, There are some things in C# that are reserved for the language itself. So if I want to call it, say, let's say string, let's look in here, right? So let's say string, let's use the word class, right? So string class, right? Oh, another problem, right? So what's the deal? It says identifier expected, not really meaningful name, right? But what this tells you is that class, it's a reserved keyword by the C#. So you cannot use it as an identifier. If you really want to use it, then you can just put an at in front. But that makes it look weird, but the at allows you to do that. And why they don't just let you do string class, right? Why? What's the big deal? Well, because class has a special meaning inside C#. So again, you will introduce ambiguity, and stuff like this creates errors. Also, so we have a string number, right? I mean int number. When I try to do int number, it told me that it's already declared above, right? So I cannot have the same identifier because of ambiguity, right? But if you make n capital, now it's fine, right? So C# is case sensitive. Lowercase number is not the same as uppercase number. You're like, okay, saying, well, what's happening? Let me put some comments here. This is illegal. What about those squiggly lines underneath that you have? They're not red, but they signify that there's problems. Notice what it says. The variable number is declared but never used. So these are basically dead woods, right? You have something in your program that you created, doesn't do anything, and just takes up space. So the Visual Studio Code lets you know, listen, you might want to check that, right? So C# has a number of variable types that come with the language. These are called primitive types. So you're like, well, what are they? You can very simply Google the primitive types in C#, right? Built-in types, they call them primitive built-in types, right? So you can see that there are bool, byte, sbyte, char, decimal, double, float, int, uint, long, ulong, short, ushort. Then you have something called a reference type, object and string, right? The first one I call value types, and then the latter is called reference type. I'm not going to go into the details what the difference between them. I will do that in a future lesson, not to confuse you. But these are the types that come with the operating system, right? Well, they give us all this information here, but it doesn't really tell us much beside the convention. So let's look at another side. So data types in C. Okay, here we got some more information, right? So here they actually give us the range. for things, right? So notice, for example, in an integer, you can go from negative 2,140,000 negative 2,147,483,648 to 2,147,483,647, right? So that's the range for that specific type. So when you have a bucket, you have to keep in mind what you're storing, what you're going to do with that bucket, right? Because think about it, right? If you have a bucket that can take to account only, let's say, numbers 1 through 10, right? Why would you create it so big, for example, that can store something so big as of this, for example, long, right? This is, I don't even know how to pronounce this. This is like 9, 12, 15, 18 zeros, man. After decimal place, right? So why would you do that? So what ends up happening is that you might be wasting space. So you have to just use the right size for the bucket by selecting the right variable type. The typical variables types that are used are integer for numbers, number 3, let's call it. Then we have string for some text, and then we have bool for true or false, right? So let's show you how to assign a value to a bucket. So let's take number, for example, right? I have a number. Let's assign 6 to it, right? So now inside the bucket called number, I place 6, right? I go again, and now I say, okay, I'm placing 5 into a number bucket, right? So what happens here? Is there 6 and 5 in that bucket? Let's find out. Console, right line. Let's write what's in the bucket. So we put the name of the variable, number, and let's see what happens. So we're gonna go save all. Let's run this by clicking the play button, then hitting the run button. All right, so all the way there we see a 5, right? The problem with this program is that, okay, 5 is there. What would happen if you had so many other numbers, right? What would those numbers mean, right? So what you can do, instead of saying just write line, you can say the value of number in double quotes. Then you do plus. In this case, it acts as concatenate number, right? So when we run this, we're gonna get the value of number 5, right? There's a problem, right? Number and 5, there's no space, there's no punctuation, there's nothing. So you go back to your program, you can add a colon, space, save all, and run it. How do you run without going there every single time? So F5. So after you save it, hit F5. The value of number is 5, right? So you see the 6 got swapped with 5. Alright, so let's do something outrageous. Let's assign to the number. Let's go back to a Google page. And let's stick in there this number. The range of the integer, right? Copy and paste, semicolon. So number 1, it starts to complain about the commas, right? It doesn't like commas. So you gotta remove the commas. So now, when I output this, it's gonna give me that number. Save all. And then F12. F5. Yep. Okay, so the value of number is 5, and the value of number is now this, right? So what happened if we make the number a little bit bigger? So copy and paste. Let's go up by 1. 8. Let's change 7 to 8. All right. So it's complaining here. So it doesn't let you change this explicitly like this. To tell you that you are going higher than you should. All right. But what if I do this? 7 plus 1, right? It doesn't like it either, right? But if I go here and I perform the addition right where I display it, look what happens. Save all. Wow, it turns the whole thing to negative. Wow, so you're saying this is nuts, right? I add a 1 to a very large number and it turns negative. It doesn't make any sense. So this is what we call an overflow. We exceeded the size of the bucket for this type of variable. So in the regular Visual Studio, you can actually, in the settings, prevent this. So the program will give you an error. In here, it just fails silently. So you have to, in a situation like this, you have to handle that. And in later lessons, I'll show you guys how to do it. Just keep in mind this scenario. This is called an overflow. Example of an overflow. Where we exceed the boundaries of the data type. So notice, look, I just want to show you something. I start typing and it's pushing my screen over. Keep in mind that sometimes you might want to print your program or someone looks at them. So you generally want to don't occupy so much real estate that your slider will start shifting. Another thing I want to talk about is the scope, which means where does the variable exist, right? So here it only allows me to create one number, right? One integer type, odd number, right? What happens if I have another function? So static, say void, let's call it main2, right? So what happens here, right? So we have another function. Let me try to declare an integer number, right? Just to tell you that you can actually assign the value as you declare it. So I can declare set the number equal to 5 right when I declare it. So what's going on? So you're saying, wow, you create an integer, you call it number, but there is also the int called number above. What's up? Well, the variables have a scope within the curly brackets, right? So int number exists only here. When you do it again like this, the computer look at this as already a different bucket that exists only under main2. So it allows you to do this. So that's the scope of a variable. And you call these type of variables local. Examples of local variable. When a variable is as declared outside, like a property here, first name, it has global access throughout the class. Because you notice, look, the curly brackets are spamming here and there. And another thing, just to show you, the Visual Studio Code puts like a line, so you know where something starts, when something ends. So this is a main too. Let's do another method that will add two numbers. Static void add two numbers. So I'm going to do console write line here. I can say adding 5 and 7, right? So I do a plus 5 plus 7. Okay, nice and dandy, but all right, so let's run a program. Let's save it. Let's run it with a 5. Okay, so it just gives me what we saw before. But where is this guy, right? Adding 5 and 7. Why is it not showing up? Two things, guys. Look, notice above it says 0 references, right? This means that this thing is like a silo. It's sitting somewhere, nobody knows about it, and never gets utilized, right? So how can we change that? So you go back to main. By the way, main, the function main, is the entry point of your program. That is the first code that will run when your program starts. So that's where you put the starting logic. of your call. Okay, so how do we get to add two numbers? So we see that it's called add two numbers, the method. So we start typing add. Oh, it's right there. Add two numbers. Okay. You're not passing any arguments. I'm going to go over that in a second. So there we are, right? Add two numbers. Now look what happened here, right? The reference went up by 1. So instead of 0, you have 1. You imagine your program is long and you see this count go up. And then you're like, I wonder where this is used. So you click on it and it goes up to add two numbers. I tell you where it's used. If you right click on it and go to definition, you can see where the logic is for what you just called. So go to definition. All right, let's close this because it doesn't see it. The fact that the other one was open was sort of like interfering. So let's go to add two numbers. Let's go to definition. Look, the cursor jumped back to add two numbers. So you can see this clearly. How does it do it? Let's try this again. So I hit on reference, brings me here. And I right click on that. No. So you do have to. Actually, yeah, you did. Look, it's the cursor is highlighted above. So it does bring you back from both places, whether this is closed or open. All right, so let's save all and let's run it. 5. All right, so here we go, adding 5 and 7, colon 57. What's going on? So here's the problem. The plus, like I said before, it concatenates it. Stuff gets appended to the string. So instead of adding 5 plus 7, it's concatenating 5 and the 7 to the text that was there before. So how do we solve this? So first, let's add some space after colon. So if you really want the addition to be performed, you need to put parentheses around the 5 and the 7. Let's save it all and let's run it. Okay, adding 5 and 7, you get 12. Good. So what's wrong with this picture, right? You add two numbers, but we always add 5 and 7. There's really no interaction besides just seeing the result, right? But you want to be able to send any two numbers and add them, right? So let's go again and create another copy of add two numbers. Okay, it's complaining that there is already add two numbers. So we cannot have ambiguity, right? So it's complaining and it doesn't let you do it, right? So what can we do here? See, a function can accept no parameters, but it can also accept something. So I can say int number 1 int number 2. Oh wow, I did this and notice what happened. Now it's not complaining, right? Because add two numbers that doesn't take any information and add two numbers that does take in two numbers is different. So the computer knows which one you're talking about. So when it's the function is trying to receive information, the incoming information, incoming data is called parameter, right? So it's a parameter called number 1 of type integer. This is a parameter called number 2 of type integer. If I try to call both number 1, I get the same issue. I get ambiguity. So you already inside the function, so you have to abide by the unique rules. So incoming data is called parameter, right? So how do we interact with this? So I go back here on top and I start typing, add two numbers. All right, so I get, let's go again. The IntelliSense is this little hint that shows up is very sensitive, so you have to be careful. So as you start typing, you're getting a choice. So you click on it, then you open parentheses, and you see like 1/2. So then that means there's two things you can do here, right? So the first choice, you can send nothing like before, and we don't want that. You press the arrow down. Now you have another choice. It shows you that you can send in two numbers. So let's send 3 and 6, right? So in this case, we're sending the 3 and the 6, and this situation when you're calling a function with arguments. So 3 is an argument, 6 is an argument. The calling end is defined as argument. The receiving end is defined as a parameter. So let's save and let's run this. F5. So here we go. We will look at the result. Oh man, it says adding 5 and 7, 12 again. All right, so the values came through, the parameters came through, but I'm not doing anything with them. So something has to change. So I go in to my write line, which writes the information to the screen. I do double quotes plus number 1 plus number 2 plus colon space. So what happened is dynamically the text gets modified with whatever is coming in. So let's try this. 5. Okay, so now we looking here, it says adding 3 and 6, but it gives us a 12. There is some more work to be done here. So as I swap the actual number with the dynamic value coming in, I have to do the same thing for the arithmetic operation. So I replace 5 with number 1. And I replace 7 with number 2. Save all and let's run it. Alright, so we see a 9. So successfully 3 and 6 were added. That thing looks a little messy, right? There's another way to write this to make it look more clean. So you can do, I like to copy and paste and modify. So I can do console write line, keep it what it is. I can do string format, open parentheses and close parentheses. And notice something unique. When I go over a parenthesis, the ending parenthesis, it shows me the beginning parenthesis. So you always need to have a matching parenthesis. If I miss a parenthesis, look what's going to happen. I get a squiggly that tells me parenthesis is expected, right? So I introduce a function method that operates on strings called format. So I can do the same thing. I can say adding open curly bracket, close curly bracket, 0. I will erase the number 1 and open curly bracket, close curly bracket, 1. And that is set to 3. I mean 2, sorry. So you're like, what is this? This is so confusing and looks so weird. So let's just clean this up a little more. So then I do a comma. And then I put the first number, the second number, and I put the result. So what is this? This is another way to manipulate strings with dynamic values. So when you put like a curly bracket and you put the 0, 0 corresponds to the first item after the comma. 1 corresponds to the second number after the comma, and 2 corresponds after the third. And you can have as many as you want. So what ends up happening is that this 0 in the curly bracket gets replaced with the value that is of number 1. So let's test this out. Let's see. So we're going to save all. Then we're going to run it with the 5. So you see, we're having the same answer with a nicer, much more clean way to do this. So now let's look at something here. Before the function, we had the word void. 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 So what is void? void stands for nothing is coming back. So I add two numbers, I display the result to the screen, and I call it done. So when I call this over here, that main doesn't know anything what happens here because nothing comes back. Like you tell someone to do something, they know, like you know, or you don't know. Like in this case, you know, but you tell someone to do something and that person never reports back to you. So at the end of the day, you don't know what happened. Right? So we don't want that. So let's change. Let's do another copy and paste. Static void add two numbers, int number. But this time we're gonna return number 1 plus number 2. Okay, so I'm returning something but still complaining. No, because you also have to say on the function level, the method level, what are you returning? So I'm returning an integer. Okay, this thing is still complaining. Tells me that there's already add two numbers in existence. So even though I changed the int here and the void, the computer will still don't know which one you want me to call. So let's call this add two numbers 2. So you have some choices here, right? You can go all the way to the top. You can create a variable called result. And you can set it equal to add two numbers. Now you see there's another option here. Add two numbers 2, 5 and 7. Right? So what will happen here? Add two numbers will get called. 5 and 7 will get added. And 12 will be returned, right? So let's test this theory, right? Console write line. The value of result right? So let's run this with F5. Yeah. So you see the value of result is 12. So the result gets returned by the function because you specify int, right? So now let's look at something that I mentioned in the last lesson. Remember, guys, when I was trying to do like, I was going all over the place and I was trying to type / / and nothing was happening. Well, that got resolved. So this is what happened. So let's go to Google. You search for C# XML comments. XML comments. in Visual Studio Code, you get the first link over here. It says C# XML documentation comments. So if you click on this, it shows you the actual extension that does it. You can look at the screenshot. So you see the person types // and it puts some text in there to be filled, right? So when you hit install, it throws you back to Visual Studio Code and it tells you that I already installed it, but you will have the installation button available here. So let's go back to our program. So why is this useful? Notice that when I was typing the add two numbers, so let's do another result, right? I do result, right? Add two numbers to, right? It just tells me like nothing basically. Just all I know that it exists, right? It seems intuitive that you know it's adding two numbers. That would be nice maybe to see some information as you type, right? That's what we're gonna enable. So let me erase this. So when I go to here, let's go in front of add two numbers too. If I type ///, now look what happens, right? It throw me into some XML code, right? It's very self-explanatory. So if you write the text between summary, you're explaining what the method is doing. So this method, or you don't have to say method because it's understood. So adding two numbers, right? So you say first number to be added. Then you have second number to be added. Returns the sum of adding the first and the second number, right? So now look what happens. Let me go and again do result equal add two numbers. Do you see? It tells me that number one is first number to be added. You type, let's say 6. Now it tells me the next one is the second number to be added. So it explains what the arguments are, right? And when you hover over adding two numbers, it tells you what the function does. That is adding two numbers. So let's try this again. Result equal add two numbers. I'm trying to see a hint. So this thing is a little clumsy because as you type, right? It doesn't really explain you what it does here yet. It tells you what the parameters are. So let's try to delete this. Let's try to save it. if that makes a difference. So result, add. I pick it. Then I guess you can hover over it and it tells you adding two numbers. But it doesn't tell you what is it returning, which is a problem. But it, you know, we take whatever we can get. So that's a lesson for today. Please persist in this training seminar. We're gonna go deeper and deeper writing programs, interfacing with SQL. It's gonna get more and more challenging and advanced, but I'm gonna go bit by bit. So hang in there, guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helps somebody.